Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We are holding the June 6th meeting of the Westford Select Board, and we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by John. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome all. We're going to start tonight with our consent agenda, and we have a couple requests here. The first is a street road closure. The event is Strides for Sotelo Memorial 5K. The applicant is Michelle Sotelo. Location is 127-132 Cold Spring Road. 130 to 48 Patton Road is the full length. The event start and stop is Westford Academy. Date is June 11th, 2023, and the time is 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. We also have a Cub Scout event, the Club Mobile Race. The applicant is Scott Kinney. Location is Fisher Way. The event will stop and start at Abbott School. The date for that is June 11th, 2023, and the time is 12:45 to 3:30 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our 705 item is continuation of the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funding requests. So thanks to Dan and the team for putting together a great sort of resource. Thanks to everybody who made requests. It was very helpful to get your priorities and your additional descriptions. What we're going to do tonight is Dan is going to have a live version of the spreadsheet, and as we move through our discussion, he can update different cells as we reach consensus on various things, and we can kind of keep track of the tally and see where we are. As we start, before we dive in sort of in a line-by-line sort of way, I just wanted to ask if anyone had any sort of organizing principles or thoughts in how they approach this that they might find useful to discuss. I'll give an example. So one of the things I was thinking about is, are 2026 requests far enough out that they're both sort of beyond the end of the commitment period, and we might be committing to something that's far out at that point. To me, it seemed natural that we might exclude those from consideration just because of the logistics, and also at that point it's far enough out that if it's important for the town, maybe it should be part of the regular budget process. I don't know if anyone else had any kind of approaches that you wanted to
I was thinking the same, exactly the same, so.
And the other one is there are a couple here that have a key impact upon our fiscal year 24 budget, even though we've passed that, and perhaps we want to consider those first before we start looking at others. And I'm thinking of the firefighters' overtime, to be honest, which I think is a fairly key and important request that we should consider. So that was what I was thinking, is that anything that has that kind of impact on our operating budget, we might want to take a look at least first and figure out what we want to do with those.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, did you have one?
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking, what was the purpose of this act in the first place? And first of all, it was to mitigate, direct damage from COVID. And then secondly was to actually make budgets whole that had holes put in them, different kind of spelling, because of COVID. So I was approaching it as first priority, what's in this list that plugs budget gaps that are critical, and then secondly, what meets the spirit of a COVID disruption. And then I agree, but 2026 is a bit far out for either one of those two things.
Yeah, John?
I just have a question. Is our goal here to obligate all the money in the next 2 meetings, or to look at priorities, what needs to be done now? I guess I'm thinking about the budget task force that you're on and some of the budget issues that may come up, and just concerned about obligating all of it, and then we may run into some things later, in the next year. But we do have, what, a year and a half on obligation left and 3.5 to expend it.
Well, it's a good point, John. I was thinking that we would come up with a provisional allocation that meets the remaining. We could decide to sort of band the release of that, or we could decide as a group that we want to have a tentative plan but only release certain items and come back in a period of time. So I don't know how other people feel. I'd be interested to know what you think.
I was thinking that, my thought was that we might appropriate most of it. We could sort of tier the release, so to speak, and if we want to, hold and reserve some amount as a contingency, that we do that. But, you know, I think, you know, we've been going through this now for more than a year, and we've had folks who've had their requests in for, you know, 12 to 18 months, and I think it's time that we reach some decision about some of these things and some matters, and give them closure one way or the other, because if we're not going to fund it and they want to look for other avenues of revenue or other resources, then I think we owe it to them at this point to tell them that.
Why don't we come back, why don't we make our target tonight to reach an allocation schedule, and we can come back at the end and say, does it make sense to put a hold on any of these items because they're not timely and we could value the additional time. The only additional thought I had in going through this was, you know, God bless him for asking, but some of these things really look like capital items that belong in a capital process. And so there were a number of things I went through and just said, you know, if it's not urgent for COVID, if it's not urgent because of time, it belongs in the capital process and should probably be there. So those were sort of the two sort of filters that I applied at the beginning. And then we had the discussion last time about the contribution to the healthcare trust. I think there's a big slider on that, what number that could be. And I think it's such a big number that slider is sort of how we're going to decide how to balance the rest of this. So,
my feeling was that your contingency is that slider, that if you put enough money in there, hypothetically like 300 grand, then you've got that money to play with and take it back out if you wanted to or had to.
I think, and Dan had made a point in a different conversation I had with him, that if any of these things, they change, we decide not to pursue the program, we can't allocate the money in time, we could, at that point, decide to allocate it to the healthcare trust. Because at the end, we have to have it all committed, and that's a logical place to commit it. It's sort of a catch-all at the end. Okay, well, why don't we, I don't know if we can get this up on the board, Dan, so everyone can see it, but why don't we start at the top, and actually, I'm going to take it a little bit out of order because I think Andrew made a really good point. So project number 3 is the fire department overtime. I don't think we need to vote on each of these, but are we all in consensus that we need to commit that?
We got paid anyway. It was already been paid.
It's already
We got to fund it, so.
So, okay, just, it's a big number, so it's a good point.
Dan, for those of us who are mathematically challenged, as we commit this, could you give us the running tally of what's left? Because I can't do that in my head.
Absolutely. I'll keep going down to the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
So that's a yes on the overtime?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we'll take these in bunches. Why don't we take 3 or 4 at a time, and then we'll check in with you, Dan, about where we sit in terms of the tally. Yep, John?
What was the period covered by that overtime? Do you recall?
It was several different periods dating back to March of 2020. Some of the applications FEMA did fund, but there are others that they kicked back because there was a question on something that weren't obligated. So it's different periods in between that just weren't funded.
Okay, thanks.
And one other question. Are we now, I mean, is there anything still outstanding? Like we still get some nominal amount back from FEMA, or have they basically said no for the rest of it?
So far they've said no. We are expecting in $31,000 for non-overtime costs, which we factored into this balance. So if anything does come up over the next year, we'll let you know, and we'll come up with a way how to reallocate this surplus in the FEMA balance.
Thanks.
I'm just going to check on our remote participants. We do have some attendees. Okay, great. These are mostly subject matter experts from the request, so we appreciate you being here, everyone who's a participant tonight. If we do have questions, we'll reach out to you as we go.
And we have people on standby for hopping on if they're not on, so we'll just send them a quick message to
Perfect.
hop on, so if anybody needs that.
Perfect. Okay, why don't we take the first 2 together? In line with what we were talking about at the beginning, I was going to suggest that we take number 2 out. I don't know if we have consensus on number 1 staying in, or, I mean, that was just my thought. I don't know how people feel about number 1 and 2.
Talking about the training?
Talking about the training, yep. Items, project number 1 and 2, yep.
Well, we did the training last October.
We did.
Right. That's the first slug, and there were 3 of them.
That's right.
So we were looking at October of, 24?
That's right.
And then October of 26. So which 2 are these? Are the October 24 and October 26?
Yes, yeah, the first 2 on the list that Dan provided, the project numbers on the left, 1 and 2. my thinking in going through this was, I would like to support the 2024 trading, but the 2026, I think, is out of scope just in terms of time for my point.
That's why I did too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's 3.5 years from now.
The thinking is just we need to have this committed and obligated by the end of 2024. Something that's that far out, sort of, it, for me, doesn't fit the COVID definition. It doesn't fit neatly into the allocation.
Okay.
And at that point, it should be in the budget, is my thinking, if we think it's important.
We're needed, we're in budget, all right.
Okay. The live captioning for town meeting, select board, maybe,
We're doing that, aren't we now?
well, Scott, can you fill us in? Because I think we do,
Well, we're doing it, I should have, I don't know if Sarah's available or not, Sarah Fletcher, because the cost, we are doing it, and she did get a cost, was I think around 6,000 and change, so it was lower than what we had here, but I did not print out that email to bring with me, so it's,
Can we get a text to Sarah? And just ask her, my read of her email back to Scott was that they do have the ability to implement this, and the subscription cost is something like $8,000 a year. And so I had thought that this 20 was basically rounding up on that. So why don't we put a pin in that and come back? But I think the request is still for that amount of money.
So over 20,000 for over like perhaps for 2 years or so?
It would cover 3 year. It would be a 3-year subscription for the service
Okay.
that provides the live captioning. And we'll just ask Sarah for confirmation on that. So why don't we go to item 16, next one on the list, Community Wellness Coordinator Year 3.
Can we, I mean, we need to get this in the budget.
Yeah.
And if we don't want to do the whole 50, but I think before we get to year 3, we need to start getting this into the budget. And so if not 50, I'm not suggesting we not fund all of the 50, but I would say that I would like to see at least 25, at least half of it come into the budget by year 3, because, I think that this is a position that we're all committed to and we want to keep. So I think we need to get it into the budget, into the operating budget.
Yep.
So does year 3 translate into the next fiscal year or the fiscal year after the next one? Which one are we talking about in terms of when we say year 3?
FY '25, yeah.
This is 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we just voted on 24. Well, is there consensus with, I guess what we could do is we could earmark a lower number. If we got further into the budgeting process and we're challenged, we could look at, if in essence we allocate that into the healthcare trust, we could look at reversing it at the time. Is the consensus that we'd like to move forward with a lower number there as per?
I mean, I had it as a
Suggestion.
no personally, because I'd want to see this in the budget, but I think I'd be amenable to doing, partial funding. I think that's a nice compromise from my perspective.
what I've wanted to do all along with these is fund them over, like the Safety Act, fund them over time so that the upper contribution drops every year. So I'm in favor of cutting it, but keeping it. 25 sounds fine.
Okay, sounds like our consensus for there is 25 with the idea that it's an important position but belongs in the budget. We also have the ability to come back and revisit. I'm just looking at Sarah's text. Okay, so Sarah Fletcher confirms the 20K is basically the cost of the 3-year subscription for the closed captioning accessibility request.
I mean, I'd certainly be in favor of funding that. I think it's a question of accessibility, for our residents, and we already have several that are taking advantage of it. My guess is that more people will take advantage of it once they know it's available.
I wonder if basically the free tools will advance to that point to where it essentially is a free service too. I think we should look at that again. My understanding is it's not something right now that you want to do entirely for free. So I'm also in support of doing this, but hope by the time we're 3 years out, it's just a normal feature of any program.
I think it's classic We have these meetings now because of COVID, right, with a lot more remote participation, and closed captioning makes that possible. But also, just as a matter of ADA, I think we probably should be doing it anyway.
Yeah, it's an important diversity, equity, inclusion argument. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons, so. Okay, I'm just gonna just check it. I think we're all in consensus there, but consensus to keep, okay?
So yes for 20,000.
Yes for, yeah, line 15. We covered 16, we covered 3. So now we're at the firefighting foam. Any feelings there? It wasn't totally clear to me why this needed to be handled outside of the normal process. I think when it was presented, it was, you know, an upgrade in environmental capability and was relatively urgent, if I recall.
Yeah, I think the fire chief thought it was rather urgent. As I recall as well, because we're running out of,
We had to dispose of.
some of our foam wasn't appropriate, as I seem to
We
remember.
had to
it
get
was
rid
out
of
of
the
date.
original allotment. We carry some on the trucks, but it's not necessarily sufficient for some types of fire. So I think there was one example of like a car caught fire on 495. We had to put that out. It might not be able to be done with what's carried on, say, the truck, or if there was a train derailment or something. So it seemed to me that it was a pretty significant need for it, based off of when I reviewed the video of his explanation for why we wanted it.
Well, that, and if you think about why we have it, it's because we got it for the asphalt plant. So if we can't use the foam that we got, there's still an asphalt plant that can burn, that we kind of want to protect that as a matter of
Yeah.
policy, so.
So the chief's email, the last paragraph says the plan was to submit a capital project for fiscal '25, which means the foam would be available to purchase in late spring of '24. Using the ARPA funds, we'd be able to purchase it now and have it in case of an emergency. So it was a
Okay.
timing thing.
To me, it's like if we don't do it and then we have an emergency, we're all gonna be kicking ourselves, so. That's why- I mean, it's only 16,000, I mean, it's not 160,000, so that's why I said I would keep it in personally.
Yeah, I would,
These days, even like, if you have like a Tesla catch fire, water doesn't do it, you gotta have foam.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, they
That's a good
burn.
point.
Okay, sounds like we're in consensus on that. If we're making good time, but if we are stepping through these and you feel like I haven't given this enough discussion time, just let me know. We
Do you
can
want to do
slow down.
a balance check?
Yeah, let's do a balance check, now that we're through the first bunch.
I feel like the tote board on a
on
telethon.
On a telephone.
What's our over or under then?
So right now, we're at 1,115,000 and change.
I see, so
remaining.
you're marking them, they're all no's in here until we say
Yeah.
yes.
And
Okay,
then once you say yes, it subtracts from the ending balance and that.
It's a reverse tote board, it goes to zero.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, got it. Unlike the tote board, we're going down, we're not going up.
okay, very good. Next 3 are all related to school proposal programs. And Chris Sanders is here with us if we have any questions. The first is, I'll say them all, but I think they, well, no, we'll do them one at a time. Okay. Comprehensive program to promote equity. This was the equity audit program, which you saw the various documentation of. And thanks for breaking down the various options to step into the various different cost items that we could look at there. I guess my general sense for these is, go ahead.
Maybe we talk about all 3 of them together, because I think sort of, they kind of go together, and if we're
Yeah.
gonna prioritize or
Yeah, I think that makes,
select from one or the other, and Chris might want to comment on what we're thinking, so.
right. No, I think that fits in with my general philosophy on these requests too, so let's do that. The comprehensive program to promote equity and social and emotional health for students and staff in Westford Public Schools. That's 5A, and then 5B is comprehensive program to promote equity and social and emotional health for students and staff in Westford Public Schools. This is the collaborative problem-solving element. So first is the restorative practices, second is independent district-wide equity audit, third is the collaborative problem-solving. Yep, go ahead, Chris.
It'd be helpful to have Chris come and address us and anybody who's watching, just explain what the potential reductions could be, because there's several options here that we can reduce the cost of these allocations, and I think that's not been made public.
Sure, why don't we, maybe we could put that up on the board here, Dan, briefly, if you could do that. Chris, would you mind coming up to the to the mic? Maybe we'll put them up there and see if people have questions, or we have questions for them. They are available in the packet, and I think we've all had a chance to read them. So certainly want to have Chris here for any questions. But I guess, Chris, to your point, there's really quite a lot of options. So maybe we can start the discussion. If we need to dig into that, we can do that. Sure. I mean, my general sense of my own personal opinion on this is, in the broad picture of things, this is an amount of money. In general, I feel like it's an opportunity to pursue strategic programs and evaluations. We have a number of them related to the town that we'll get to. I feel like this sort of fits into that bucket from my point of view, and I would trust the school committee to establish the priorities for the schools before I would, trust my own judgment for these. So, in general, I think, given the amount of money, given the percentage it represents of the whole, I would want to, support these programs and include them.
Actually, I would differ with that. I think I agree with you on the point of this is very like the town planning items. So I was going to view them all like together, not school and then town, but kind of together. So I'm not sure we can afford to do all of them. So I would not be inclined to support everything here until we've gone through the town side too and said, of these long-range plans, which ones can we make fit?
Okay, fair enough. We could definitely treat this as a piece alongside the strategic piece, and then if we say, look, we need a balance in this way, we could come back and say, maybe we look at a percentage here and a percentage here. That's what you mean? Okay. Any other feelings on these? Because we can discuss them more, or we can come back and sort of allocate once we're kind of have a better sense of the total.
Okay.
I had a quick question. So
Sure.
You might have said this in your memo, and I apologize if you did, but what did the school committee itself make any recommendations on the lower funding amount options?
No, as a committee, we didn't. We kind of put our heads together as a subset and said, what do we think we could get for a lower offering? Because we kind of do embrace the something rather than nothing approach. So that's our best guess of what we would get for that. So. But as a committee, we didn't discuss those because we'd already kind of had the full funding amounts and just wanted to make sure we offered something, because we do think there's some benefit even at the lower funding levels.
But the preference would be to do the full funding amount?
Sure.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
I didn't
know,
snicker,
maybe they
but I
changed their
appreciate it.
They're not negotiating with themselves.
But I do think, just even looking like the next level of reduced funding, there's a lot to be had.
Yeah.
To be gotten out of that as well, I would say.
Okay, John?
What is the 75,000, what does that go to? What is the 75, how's that broken up? Is it all a contract, or is it?
For which one? For both,
equity.
actually. For both, it would be mostly, contracted services, yeah.
Mostly contracted services. Is there anything particular you're looking at? I mean, you had a survey with that a while back, I think. And then this is digging deeper.
Oh, and the equity?
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, no, they would do a full, I mean, it's really, I think last time I might have said it's like an MRI. It would really be looking at all of our practices, all of our curriculum, all of our, for the 75, I think you'd get a pretty, full look at everything the district is doing and recommended changes or approaches that we'd want to be taking in future years to improve our, equity in the district.
Does this dovetail, I know you folks just had some training in hiring DEI. Would this dovetail into this at all? Would you build on that or use that training or?
Yeah, I think we had some training in hiring practices and recruiting for a diverse pool of talent, and so I think that's just kind of a sample. That's just the beginning. But yes, I think this would definitely build on that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that it was the same as much as just a small
Absolutely.
Part of it.
Yeah.
I got a question on restorative.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Restorative practices, I was looking at a restorative practices guide that was published recently. Now, is this gonna be, are you gonna have a professional organization help you with this? Or could you use something like a guide and do it yourself?
We'd have to have training. It's something that you really have to do, and you really need to be led through it. A guide would certainly be helpful to supplement the training, and and, you know, we've outlined either 2 or 3 years of training, so at some point, presumably, we may not be doing the training, or we'll be looking for alternative grant funding or something for continued training. Or the trainers train the trainer, which is sort of what we build in here, yeah. But a guide alone wouldn't really be sufficient, because you really have to be led through it.
So restorative practices and the collaborative problem solving, those are things you're gonna be doing, training.
Yeah.
And then the energy audit is trying to find out where we are.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
So my question was, if we did the full funding, you're getting 3 years worth of training essentially. So
Right.
the way I sort of thought about this was what we were talking about earlier. Where we're saying, okay, should these items be something that we budget for in future budget cycles rather than try to fund in advance? So if we were to do the lower funding or potentially maybe do the full funding for, say, year one, and then try to find money in the budget to supplement or to continue this training as we go forward, sort of fits with what we were thinking with some of these other projects. So that's where I, certainly in favor of doing these programs, but I was sort of thinking maybe we go for the lower amount and then try to find funding for the budget to continue it in future years.
Okay, I think it sounds like what we want to do, thanks, Chris, sounds like what we'd like to do is sort of put a pin in this and then come back and we'll look at the totality and say, okay, on the strategic programs that we would love to dig in on, the ask is this, it looks like we can only do this, so let's come back and look at these items again. Okay. Why don't we do that? So thanks.
You'll know where to find me?
Yep, you're free. So let's jump down to items 7, 8, 9, which are the rental mortgage utility assistance. And the difference is, let's see. Someone may have to help me. I think the first year we already did a partial allocation because they'd run out. Or for the existing fiscal year, we made an allocation.
I was gonna say, didn't we do an allocation for
thought we did.
FY '23?
Yeah, we just did another 7,500 back in April.
Okay.
so-
So this is for 24, 25, 26.
Correct.
Okay.
I think 26 falls under,
That's how I marked it on my score sheet. I don't know if folks are in consensus that we would find 24, 25, but consider 26 out of scope.
Actually, by my own logic, I was doing full funding 24, half funding 25, and 0 26. But I was phasing it out, but that's just because I was trying to be consistent,
I like
not
the
because it's right.
24, 25 idea, if we're gonna phase it out. I mean, 24 and 25, I think.
The only reason for this was a little bit different is I feel like this is not money that would end up as a recurring item in the budget because it could stay in the budget permanently. It has not been there historically. So I was a little bit more in favor of funding 24 and 25 and not 26, but a step down could also work. I don't know how other folks feel.
Well, this is one of the things where we're actually doing something for the people. And that's what the coronavirus did something against, and we're trying to fix that. And I think this helps people directly. And I would be in favor of funding all of it, but if we're gonna kind of exclude 26, I'd sure want to fully fund 24, 25.
I'd fund them fully for 24 and 25,
So that's
an extra 15
Yeah.
isn't gonna, I don't think really matters, and I do agree with John, you know, we have got people who've been, as you know, struggling, and the state is going to be phasing out some of its rental programs that it's been doing, so.
Okay, John?
Well, what I like about it is we're doing something for our citizens. It's not a study, it's not a,
Right.
Something like this, it's material to them.
Good thing in the mix to give them something direct.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of what this is for, I think.
Okay. Are we in consensus with 24, 25, and hold on 26? Looks like we are. Okay. Items 11, 12, 13 are, to my read, effectively capital requests from Westford Cat. My sense is I've been very happy that we've supported accessibility in all the ways that we have. I think Westford Cat's been a terrific partner in that. Westford Cat also has their own capital budget, so at some point, I don't know how folks feel on these. I think it does make sense to introduce things back into the respective capital processes at some point, unless it's urgent or directly COVID related. I don't know where people landed on that, but this sort of fit in the capital bucket for me. Yep, Chris?
Can these even be brought to capital?
It's not town.
It's too low.
It's not it's not that they don't, the Westford CAT has their own internal funding, has their own capital method. They allocate budget every year for capital. They have their own capital approval process. So,
Hear from them why they can't fit it into that process then? It might have been discussed at the previous meetings.
it is not, and we could certainly ask,
Sarah's on, we can promote
I
her.
was
Yeah,
gonna
we can
say, I
promote-
think
we can bring
Sarah's
Sarah
here
on.
now.
so once Sarah's up, we can ask sort of where these specific requests fit into, I guess I'd be interested in, into COVID support or, emergency accessibility support, or at what point do they fall into the more routine capital needs that the organization has? And Sarah, looks like you're there. Hey, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, hi, Sarah.
Hi, it's Sarah. So these upgrades are to accommodate the hybrid and remote meeting space that we've been navigating for the last few years. And it has been necessary for us to go beyond our $10,000 allotment each year that we get from Comcast. It has been exceeding our capital budget, so that's why we brought it forward.
And Sarah, this is something you're gonna need to continue to do our hybrid and remote meetings, and which there may be even more coming, in the next, over the next year? Is
Oh,
that-
sure. And these are one-time, this is a one-time purchase. These capital items, the storage, we're expanding to a 10 terabyte storage unit so we can handle the remote hybrid meeting space, storing all those meetings, archiving them, and having them accessible for everyone. It has been a needed upgrade for us, and certainly make the not only the viewer, we have a new dynamic in our television service that we're not only accommodating the producers, the Board of Selectmen, and the viewers, but now we have participants in this hybrid space. And so that requires some upgrading of our equipment, and that's where we've come forward. And I did reduce the number of drives and the price on this. So we need, for this full service, we need 16, 18 terabyte hard drives, which I can buy over time. So I took that number down quite a bit.
Okay, questions for Sarah? Yep.
Yeah, what's the total now then that you're asking for?
Well, hang on just a minute. Let me see if I can get that right in front of me here.
Dan can do it for you,
Come on.
Sarah.
Because one went down to $39.90 and the other was at $3,100.
That went down to 8,
Well, it went below 8,
I think it's just a hair under 8,000.
yeah.
went down to 8.
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
so 7,990.
I was subtracting it from that.
Any other questions for Sarah? I guess, Sarah, so these are outside the normal course of events, wear and tear, replacement. This is specific to basically support the new capability that COVID has brought on.
Yes.
Okay.
And my thought is, I think we need to, I don't want to see us lose the capability that we've built up for hybrid meetings and allowing our residents to participate remotely. I think that has resulted in much more participation than we've seen in the past. So if this is what Westford CAT needs to continue that service, then I would support it. And I certainly, Sarah, appreciate you taking a second look at this and realizing that you could spread the costs out for the purchase of the drives over several years and not all at once.
Yeah.
So thank
And
you for doing
that
that.
makes sense to bring that into our capital plan over the next 2 or 3 years, to buy a couple of hard drives each year and just keep upgrading that system till it's put to its full capacity. But as we, yeah, that's about it.
Okay, good. I think, thanks, Sarah. So what's our consensus for those?
I'm for funding all three requests, with
Okay.
the line 12 be at $3,990.
Yep.
Okay, So this reduces the request to 3990. So what we're proposing endorsing is 3990 for that line item.
That would be my recommendation.
I would
Okay.
agree.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
So where are we, Dan?
All right, let's check.
What's the tote board?
$1,047,000 and change.
Very good. Okay. Next up is the community health assessment from the health department. This is 75,000.
So, I'm not in favor of funding this. I've listened over the past months to the health department and to Ray, and I still am not convinced that the town really needs this, and that we don't have other tools. That we've been looking at our community health and other surveys that have been done. I know that we went out and looked at whether any other communities were certified, and as I recall, there were very, very few.
Yeah.
So, I'm not in favor of funding this.
I guess the reason I'm interested in funding something like this is if we could get sort of a good look at the current state of services and requirements in town. I think that'd be very valuable as part of our broader strategic study. I don't think we need the accreditation. I don't know that that's something that's useful to us, but I think a byproduct of the health assessment would be just to give us a lot more insight into strengths and weaknesses in terms of health that we're providing.
I guess.
Yeah, John, go
Well,
ahead.
my comment is their starting point for this was the Greater Lowell survey, or some kind of a assessment that they did on the health, and then Westford was included, so that was a starting point for their effort. I'd like to know what that says, and then what would we be doing to improve on that? Is there information out there that we don't have that we need? But I agree with Andrea. I'm reluctant to, because the accreditation I don't think is that important. I don't think we ought to need to be spending a lot of money on that. I kind of agree. I agree with Andrea on that.
Okay. Yep, Chris?
I had a question. Do we think that we would be able to get any direction if we did the strategic plan? Would that give any sort of data points to the health department with which to, at least help them with their direction, and then maybe even if we get some good data from that, help refine what they would need to do with a future assessment?
Can I answer that?
Oh, yeah, please.
Sure. So I've been involved in both a community health assessment and a community health improvement plan and a strategic plan. So I've seen all three angles. I think that the strategic plan is obviously the highest level planning document that a municipality would have. It does collect base level data, but I believe that the community health assessment would collect even better data and, data that the health department could proactively look towards, related to students, related to seniors, related to the general public, areas that are vulnerabilities related to health, areas that could be preventative related to health. So I personally see a benefit for a community health improvement plan for the town of Westford. I could go either way on the accreditation. I was involved in a regional health district that was accredited, and there were certain benefits related to that, but it was a regional district. It was not a municipality. I know our police department is accredited. Apples and oranges to an accredited police department to accredited health department, but I think we have seen through the pandemic that it's really important to get this health data and to understand the parameters related to the health of our community.
My concern is we have a whole lot of data out there. The schools do assessments over, data for the students and health, et cetera. We've done surveys in the past. The TSSTF, whatever, you know what I mean, the task force.
There was an element of it there.
There was an element there, and, before we start allocating and spending money on another study, I really need to have an understanding of what do we have now, and what do we need, and what are the holes that we want to plug. And I don't have that understanding now. And so without that understanding, at least for me, I'm having a real hard time supporting this at this point in time.
I'm sort of doing this in the same, that same spectrum of, the school studies, the town studies, this falls in that same bandwidth, and probably, at the lower end of that bandwidth, because given what we also have already done for work, so, yeah, I mean, I'm inclined not to support it, but at best put a pin in it.
Okay, sounds like the consensus, I'm not sure, do we hear directly from you, Chris, where you are?
I was a no, really, and given this conversation, I still like to have the strategic plan move forward and see what kind of data we get out of that, and then potentially do this in a future year.
It sounds like consensus is to not do this for now. I guess what I would like to do in a future meeting is maybe bring forward an example, maybe answer the question that Andrea has, like what's the stuff that we have, what does a community health assessment look like? I'm not convinced of any of the accreditation. It's the data you get about where your community is in terms of health needs, what's provided, what's not. I think that's well within scope of what we should be thinking about as local government. So let's make that a future agenda item to come back and help us understand better what the difference is between what we already have and what an excellent data set that would come out of a study like this would be.
Just want to, for your thought process moving forward, it's also an improvement plan. So it's the data, and then it's how we would move forward using that data of implementation. So it's a two-step process. Just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, so we'll come back to that in a future meeting. The next couple, we'll do them one by one. So the Brightly computerized maintenance management system. This sort of felt to me like something that we should be budgeting for, and just to offset it out of the budget into this didn't seem compelling to me, but I'm just
Haven't we been reducing that cost
I was
gradually?
gonna say, we've already funded some of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be 14,000 for the third year of it.
This will be the last year we
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
this, right?
this would be like the safer grant proposal.
Yeah.
And then that would be it. We absorb it into the budget.
Yes.
okay. So it's consensus to approve, include that? Okay. GIS system upgrades.
Can somebody remind me what these are, because I forgot, to be honest with
What's
you.
that?
The GIS system upgrades, I forgot what this one was, and I didn't go back and look it up.
Is that a Steve Cronin thing, or a?
No, well, I remember the discussion, I can't,
I thought it was something to do with putting it as like using their software of a service offering versus having it hosted in-house, and that was gonna give us some
That's
better
what I recollect.
capabilities, and, it would automatically be patched and in the future, that type of.
We have Steve up if anybody would like to ask him a question.
Steve, maybe you could refresh our memory about what this capability is and why it fits in the kind of ARPA regime.
Sure, thank you. So currently we're using a server-based system that's basically at its capacity. This is to upgrade the existing GIS system into an enterprise platform so that we can do basically data entry and update in the field, as opposed to collecting data, bringing it back, having to go through a download and upload process, creating multiple layers of data. So it's certainly going to streamline things for us and make us more efficient in what we do.
And if, Steve, if you didn't fund it this way, this would become a future budget or capital request?
Correct. We bring this as a capital request for fiscal 25.
How do folks feel about?
I got a question for Steve. Does this include a significant improvement in just the overall website and how we access the data in the GIS system?
So the public-facing viewer is currently being updated right now. You already funded that with a previous ARPA request. This is basically everything that's happening behind that. All the syncing of data between the various departments, including assessors, police, fire, all the public works departments, stormwater, all the various layers.
I mean, to me, it seems like an important thing to do. I just feel like it probably belongs in the normal process. But
If you wait till capital for FY '25, how's that gonna impact you, Steve?
It's just gonna slow us down in the meantime. You know, right now, as I said, we're sort of at capacity with the existing system, so, you know, we can't have several users all using at the same time and operating efficiently. So, you know, we'll still be able to get the work done. It's just gonna take us significantly longer, that's all.
Where do folks land on this in terms of consensus?
I was a yes. I find the GIS system one of the most valuable pieces of tech that we have. So anything we can do to make it better and make it easier for these guys to put data in it, I think is value. But I certainly could be swayed to say move it to capital as well.
I guess my filter was, is it immediately urgent and is it COVID related? And if not, we have a system that helps us prioritize and make these choices, but I've already said my opinion. I mean, it's an important thing. I would go along with the consensus if people went the other way. I was trying to find a rule set to apply to this that helped me be consistent, so that's my rule set.
Yes, I'm on the fence about this one. Can we put a pin in it and see where we are at the end?
Sure.
I was a yes because, well, because my rubric was, we know we've got a problem with next fiscal budget. Are we solving that problem with, you know, as one of these items? The answer would be yes, so, but
It sounds like people are trending a little bit more yes. I mean,
I'm for it.
You could also spin it with the COVID perspective of if the workers are able to update in the field, they don't have to come back to the office. If there's a pandemic again, like they're out there, and it speeds up so they can do other things as well. So I'll just put that thought in your mind.
But you could apply that logic to almost anything.
Yeah, you could.
Well, this improves our capability. It's
Yeah.
not another plan.
Okay. It sounds like we're trending yes. We can come back and review it again, but it sounds like we should mark that for yes for now. Assistance and remediation for PFAS testing, and there's sort of two pieces to it. One is reimbursing Water Enterprise, and the other is the Board of Health to offer some well inspections for people who live here in town.
I was inclined to split it. I felt like, you know, if we're pushing through a major water rate increase, we should you know, pay for something out of the water budget, but the water, the few people who don't take town water, who are now at the mercy of PFAS, should have testing. So I was going to say yes, fund the private well testing, but not the.
I did exactly the same thing.
So did I.
Yeah, I feel like the ratepayers should,
Yeah.
ratepayers should pay their obligation, and then for people that aren't ratepayers, we should help them.
I was along the same mindset. My only concern was I wasn't particularly pleased when asking the folks about how we were going to make those tests available to the public and what sort of data we could glean from the application of those tests. I thought we could be a little bit more robust and strategic with doing that. So I would like to see, you know, staff put a little bit more thought on how they would actually do that.
Okay, so we could ask in a future meeting what the plan is for doing this.
Those are all valid concerns.
The Board of Health plan for how are they gonna make them available, and what are we hoping to learn from it? What's the
Right,
best
so,
thing?
for example, I wouldn't want to see all the tests be deployed in the Vose Hill neighborhood. That's great for me, I live there, but it doesn't tell anybody else any data, right? So I think we should at least make an effort to see them be distributed at least equally around the town, so we have some understanding of where some of this contamination might be present. And then that's knowledge that I think private well owners would want to know about.
We had that discussion because they were talking about first come, first served, and that wasn't gonna work. So I think parsing them out to the different, but there's not that much. 25% of the town, I think, is on well.
Okay, so maybe the guidance to the Board of Health folks when they do propose their distribution is there some way we can both get some kind of representative coverage for our learning, but also have the fairness of people who, you know, notice this and act quickly, they should get some priority. So some way to balance those needs. Okay, you got that, Dan? So that's a yes for 20. And I don't think we need to keep Steve up unless Steve likes. Steve, you can. Steve likes to stay on screen. You can stay. But I think we're moving on.
He's keeping an eagle eye on
Was that
us,
two
I'll
parts
tell
or
you.
one part in 20?
There were two parts. There was a
Okay.
49.9 request, and we, I think, have agreed for 20 for the
Right.
Board of Health
Funded at
portion.
20.
So it's not a yes entirely, it's a partial
It's a
yes.
partial yes.
It's a partial yes.
Got it, thank you.
Supplemental funding for the O'Brien Farm Conservation Restriction Public Footbridge. My memory of this and the next one was a little bit different because there was a time urgency to it. My memory for this one was we wanted to make sure that all of the avenues available through CPC had been exercised before we stepped in with ARPA funding, because the natural and appropriate funding source is CPC for this.
Yeah.
So do we have any, it says no update, so I don't think we have an update there.
So I spoke with Bat Salem yesterday about this. Obviously, the bids came in higher than we expected. The next opportunity for CPC funding is at the October special town meeting, so that puts us at, end of October to start construction, which is running up against the season if we do have bad weather coming in at that period of time, or holding off until the springtime. So it's a timing matter if we push it off to CPC.
I don't think it's urgent.
Yeah, what's the, would we have to close the bridge, or what's the consequence of waiting until the
Bridge
spring?
there now.
Yeah.
There isn't a bridge at all, okay.
I still think they should go through CPC.
Yep, John?
I know another question was about the timing as far as obligating the funds is concerned. And I think they satisfied that said if we did approve it at special town meeting, that would be in time, that they don't have to spend the money. I think there's a grant or there's something involved there.
Is the Mass Trails grant that we might run up against
So,
that timing as well.
But they said if we had the money and started the work, we didn't have to spend it all. As long as we obligated it before, I guess, the end of the year or something like that. That was my understanding. So this would work if we just do it at a special town meeting.
Okay, fair enough. So that consensus sounds like we're no. Okay. Next one, Stony Brook Conservation Water Main. Now, I misspoke. We did approve the sanitation
Right.
thing because that was urgent and required. So that is not the same for this. Well, maybe, but it's a different project. So Stony Area Conservation, maybe I need to be reminded, is that something that has to get acted on in order to use the camp this summer, or is that something we can come at?
My understanding, it does not have to be acted upon for the camp this summer, but it should be acted upon soon because of the condition of the water main.
And the normal course of this would be through capital?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where people sit on
So
that.
that would mean it would be acted on for capital for next.
For fiscal
It would
25.
go into the capital stack.
FY '25.
I mean, for me, it doesn't meet the urgency or the COVID need, and there's a reason we've got an excellent capital process, because I don't have a good sense of where this fits in priority relative to all the other things. So I just wouldn't want to be cherry picking things out of the capital queue and approving them without the benefit of the capital committee's review.
Do you remember why this was put on here? I mean, is there a timing issue with, could this break this summer and then we're,
I don't believe
can't
so.
run a camp or anything like that? It's not like the sewer,
The sewer sold me, we didn't have another way to fund it.
Yeah.
We had,
yeah, but this one wasn't in the same bucket, if you were.
I don't believe so. If we've, we could come back. Is your memory?
I don't think it was as urgent as the other one, so, and we do have reserve funds and things like that we could look into.
I was just, that's what I just said to Chris, is that there are reserve funds if something happened.
Okay.
That's an easy no then.
Okay, so are we in consensus for no? Okay. No meaning we want to support the normal process, and
Correct.
of course, it's a valuable thing to do. Next is the Economic Development Coordinator. Who wants to go first? Chris?
I'll go first. I'm a yes. I would like to see it funded differently, but I do think that the town would benefit greatly from this. I wish we've had it in place previous to this time frame. So if this helps moves that process along, I was a yes for this.
So, I'm a yes, I agree we need an economic development coordinator. I think that can only benefit the town, particularly when we look at surrounding towns and vis-a-vis that. My concern is what happens
Yeah.
when there are no more funds and we have to get this in the budget, and if we don't get this in the budget, that we lose the position. So that's my concern. It's not that I don't think we need this, it's that I'm worried that once we run out of the 95,000, that we have a problem.
I think the place that this landed was this was going to be like a like a consulting services over the course of 2 years.
I know it's a 2-year,
To
yeah.
help us
2 years,
fully,
okay.
so it would be
Yeah.
designed to end. We could decide to continue it, but it would be designed with a scope that said, after 2 years, we've got the information, we've got the map, we've got the needs of the community. So, because we started, Andrea, the request, as you're exactly right, started as a position, and then there was concern about, well, what about year 3? It'd be great to do the experiment, demonstrate the need, and then decide, as opposed to jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I certainly support the concept, the idea, and whatever. I just worry about 2 years when the funds run out, what will happen then. So, but I suppose that's not a reason not to fund it now, but it's a reason to be on sort of notice.
It's a reason to, yeah.
That we need to monitor.
Perhaps if they're
this.
able to generate the funds through new growth and
Yeah.
other avenues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
point.
Perpetuate.
Yeah, so I had 3 points there. One was exactly that, it's a pilot. Does it pay for itself or not after 2 years? Secondly, it's, I don't want to lay off anybody, but laying off a consultant is different than laying off a town employee. So the fact that consultant says, I'm okay. And then thirdly, we've got a Route 110 that is, I think, been made, in some cases, obsolete because of COVID. I mean, we've now, changed our whole office environment, and we got a lot of office space out there that may not be useful. So we probably need to think about how do we, rethink that, and that requires a person who's a development coordinator to do it. So I thought that was my three thoughts to say yes.
Okay, yeah, I think we're basically blind to that set of needs and the trajectory they're on, so that's not good. So it sounds like we're in a consensus yes for that, okay. We have a number of important, interesting town manager requests here now. Website redesign?
Okay, so I fully support this.
Would you support?
Yeah, let's do, can we do a tally?
Now we get to the trade-off point for me,
Yeah.
so.
We have 890,000 change remaining.
Okay. So, yes, I fully support a website redesign, as I probably think the majority of our community supports.
Any debate there?
No, I think it's.
Consensus, yes, okay. Facilities master plan. I'll go first on this just to say, I think the opportunity in general for all of these, my opinion, and all these town requests are, it is such a valuable and rare opportunity to be able to do any of these strategic studies and to be able to do them at the dawn of the new town manager's career. I just think is especially valuable. I also don't know how we're going to reapproach the idea of how to solve the long-term IT and other problems without this, without taking a careful sort of ground-up look again. So this one seems to me to be, I'll tip my hat. I'm going to support a number of these that follow, but I think that's a really important element of us knowing what to do.
I think perhaps the most useful report I've seen in my years on the board was the one we did with the last facility study that said fire station not worth saving, town farm not worth saving. So I think it's been, 10 years or so now?
Yeah.
We're doing it for schools. We've done it for schools. I think it makes sense to the town side to do it. And then you're right. I mean, I think town meeting quite clearly said, what's your plan before we build 51 Main? What's your plan? And this would give us that plan.
Yeah, I would agree with you that I think doing a facilities master plan at this point is something we really should do. We need to look at all of the town buildings. We need to look at, their condition, their status, what can be saved, what couldn't be saved, what should we sell?
Hey, I mean, seriously, not to beg, but do we need Frost and Cameron? No, I mean, between Frost and Old NAB
Old
and
NAB.
Road and Bush, all for basically a nonprofit organization. I mean, which maybe we do, maybe we don't, but we should really think through.
Okay, sounds like we're at consensus, yes.
I'm for the facilities plan.
The facilities plan. All we're talking about now is the
I'm a
facilities
little bit
plan.
lukewarm on the others. I think we got 414,000 of plans, and too much at one time, I think. But I like
Okay.
the facilities plan, and, continuing to look at our facilities utilization over time is something we need to do.
Okay, so
with
consensus yes for facilities. Townwide strategic plan is next.
I was a yes for that. It's been a long time since we did our last master plan, and I thought there was a lot of value that we derived out of it. So I'd like to see something like that, whether it's strategic or down a level. I could be moved either way, but I'd like to see an overall plan of attack for what we're going to be doing for the future.
Kristen, is there a way to combine the strategic, the townwide strategic plan that you're talking about and to somehow roll a master plan that comes out of that? Is there a way to sort of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think if there's some way to sort of combine those and have like the master plan as a subset of something that comes out of a townwide strategic
Yeah, I
plan?
like that.
I can think more on it and
Sure,
get some more
yeah.
examples, but I understand, a few board members had asked me one-on-one, why did you rank land use master plan under strategic plan? And I said, well, the strategic plan is kind of the highest level, and I know I shared a few examples with you all. I think a lot of the data from the strategic planning process could roll into a land use master plan, but strategic plan is really where are we in terms of community engagement, in terms of facilities, in terms of land use, in terms of communications with our residents, in terms of setting a mission and vision and values with our staff and our employees. So that's a higher level, but I think we could use some of the data from the strategic plan to roll into a master plan. I'm just not familiar with a community, whether in Massachusetts or another municipality or land type in the U.S. that has done such a thing. So, but I'm definitely willing to look into it.
I mean, just a thought, and then I think just for the public who may be listening, if we were to do a townwide strategic plan, what happens afterwards, okay? How is it implemented? You get all this data, you get all the results. What are the next steps? Because I think
Absolutely.
people would want to know, okay, we have this plan, now what?
Yeah, so you'd have certain action items related to that plan, and you'd basically match your budget every year to that strategic plan because you have heard from the community what the community's wants and needs are. So we'd be driving to that direction based upon our budget choices as well as other choices that we could make.
I mean, to me, that's the thing we all act in good faith based on our, truly have belief about what the people of Westford want. But I think the idea of us going through a formal engagement process about what kind of town, what kind of services, what kind of values do we want to represent as a town is pretty important. I think it's easy just to live the next day like the last one at a time and not say, how do people prioritize, access to recreational facilities? How do people prioritize, maybe people don't want certain things that we're thinking they might want and they want to focus elsewhere. So I just think it would be a useful roadmap for us to develop about, based on real data, what the wants and needs are.
And I know you said Shrewsbury had just completed one before you came here.
Correct.
How long did it take for that? Can you
It took
remind
about
us?
a year to 14 months. It was a lot of public engagement, and I continue to hear that in Westford time over time since I've been here, is we need more community engagement, we need to outreach to residents. So there was probably 7 or 8 touch points where we could get to residents to really understand their feedback, and then once the consultant developed the plan, going back out and touching base with the residents, is this what you meant, or are these what your needs are? So I think it builds a trust as well between town government and the residents and business owners.
I mean, one question I think the public's going to have, and I have to some degree, is how do these different plans fit together? And
Right, that was my next question.
they all basically, it's all a plan. I know that they're distinct, but I would like to even understand better, like, is there overlap? Because that could be productive, or are they really distinct, or do they feel like puzzle pieces? So at some future meeting, we should, while if we're still evaluating these, or we are proposing multiple ones of these, I think we're going to have to explain how they fit.
Yeah. And also the plans that we already have. I mean, we have a housing plan that we just did and it's been approved. We have an open space plan. I'm not sure when it's up for.
I think that's pretty invalid at this point in time.
It may be,
so-
yeah, but we've had in the
Right.
past an open,
Yep.
an open space plan. We've had housing plans. We've had a master plan.
Yeah.
So I think your point is, I would take your point, Tom, is how do these all fit together? Okay, I mean, in working at a strategic townwide plan.
Right, right.
certainly with respect to the housing plan, at least that's done and that's current.
Yes, that would inform the strategic plan, that would go up. And then the strategic plan could filter down related to, do we need a townwide recreation plan? I think the facilities plan is kind of needed at this time based upon the constraints that we have, but.
And you did didn't you had a
Recreation and open space.
We did a recreation master plan
Master
in
plan.
2016.
Yeah.
So it's pretty current.
We used to do those together, recreation and open.
Right, open space and recreation plan, right, through the state,
And
yep.
recreation plan, and they need to be included. I think the capital plan needs to be
Correct.
included.
Well, how do we feel about this particular one? We could put a pin in it and ask for more information about how they fit together. We could proceed with it. To me, at least, given what we've already talked about, facilities is a clear, distinct thing. I feel like there's some missing piece, at least for me, of reaching out and finding out what people really value and having that inform directly what we're prioritizing. So to me, the part of that would be in the strategic plan is something that I'd love to have. I think we need, I should say.
I can support that. I guess I want to have a discussion though before we go out, to bid about exactly, what we're looking for and how,
Absolutely.
what we already have fits into that. So
Absolutely.
that's all I'm saying,
Okay.
Tom, is that I'm okay with this, but I do want to look at it in total before we go out to bid.
Yeah.
I originally was, facilities I wanted land use, I said we had to have, because we were so late having one. And I actually had the strategic plan, not a yes, but then I wanted to talk to Chris and say, what are we getting for this? Because I frankly was underwhelmed by Shrewsbury's document. I mean, maybe a great work effort, but the knowledge base that we got out of it, as I read it, was kind of like, we should have all that stuff already. Yeah. But yeah, if we actually were to really get out of it things that I don't know, such as, we've got some very unique neighborhoods. One of my gosh, like 5 years ago, I got invited to one of our neighborhoods for a cookout. It was a largely ethnic Indian community, awesome corn on the cob. It was a great situation to just talk to the residents. We don't do that very often to get that direct feedback. Right. So if this plan does that for us, then I'm in favor of it. But I kind of want to see a little bit more about bang for the buck. Because if I had to pick of the three in terms of payback to the taxpayers, I feel very good about facilities and land use, and not plus. And that's also why I will look at the schools in context too, because to me these are all kind of fit together in terms of we got a funding point for so much, and where does it all fit together? So I'm a maybe, but I would lean towards yes, because I also figure that Tamara should get what she wants. That she's brand new. If Tamara says I did this for planning, we should give it to her for planning. So that my bias becomes a yes in that respect. But
Yeah.
I'd be interested in a sequence of how we would do these, what would be going on at the same time, and how we'd execute that. Are we going to have a committee to work it? Are we going to do it in-house? And I know when we did the comprehensive master plan, that had all of this in it. And a lot of the same things that you see in the strategic plan were mentioned in that. Community engagement was there. So, I mean, it's an older plan, but it had kind of all of this. It had the open space in it, it had facilities, and a lot of the things that we've done in the last 10 or 15 years came out of that plan. So I'd be interested in just the hierarchy, how we do it, and how much is going on at any one time.
Yeah.
And
You could, if it's like, letting 5 chickens loose in a room at once, then that's going to be a mess. So I agree, understanding how it sequences is important.
Yeah, and then the cost.
Land use has certainly indicated that the MBTA communities, and I agree, is the #1 priority, and that's from now until March. So I don't see us engaging in a land use master plan before that's done. That's a priority.
We should give them a break
Yeah.
too before we start on something
Yeah.
new.
But I know we've heard from town meeting, their thoughts and processes and desires as well. So it's a careful balance.
I do think that the economic development economic development position has to have some bearing upon land use as well, so I don't want to get them too far apart.
And strategy too. I think that there's a whole silent constituency that we're not engaging with. They're serving very well, despite the hard work of the Economic Development, Committee. It's just not, it's not work that they can do by themselves. Okay, sounds like we have kind of a,
Tom, I just
Yeah,
have a quick
go ahead,
question,
Chris.
sorry. So, one of the recommendations from the strategic master plan will not be to follow up with a master plan afterwards, will it?
So I'll call the first one a strategic plan, and then the other a land use master
I'm
plan.
not talking about the land use master plan.
Okay.
I'm talking about the differences between, like the master plan John was talking about, what we did in 2009 versus
Yep.
the strategic plan that you're advocating for.
Yep,
They sound like they're slightly different.
yep,
So what I don't want to have happen is we do the strategic master plan as you have it laid out, and then a recommendation to say we follow it up with a master plan. I'm still not 100% clear on the differences between the two.
sure.
Because we've done one in town, you've done one in your previous position, but.
Yeah.
So is that a chance of happening? I mean, will this document give us the detail that we need to
No,
be?
no, they're two very distinct plans.
So you think that there will be the need to do a master plan as a follow-up to the
There will be a
strategic-
need to do a land use master plan as a follow-up to a
No,
strategic plan.
No, not land use. I understand the need for the land use. I'm
Yep.
talking about the other components that we have in the master. Have you looked at our master plan?
I've read it many, many times.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of stuff in there that has nothing to do with land use, right? So that's
Facilities and clean energy and
Clean energy,
sustainability.
the pedestrian safety committee is
Yep.
one I like to reference a lot. So my point is, will those types of recommendations and desires from the community be in the strategic plan, or will we need to do yet another plan in order to uncover those sort of wants and needs?
So I think the overall townwide strategic plan would help us inform what we need to do next in terms of planning documents, if anything. So it would say you need to dig deeper into this, or you're already covered in this area or aspect. So I can't say definitively yes or no, but I think that there would be a menu to choose from after that overall townwide strategic plan is done.
I think what we're going to need is understanding how these plans fit together and then understand how it relates to the 2009 master plan, which is a
Sure.
lot of people in the community's reference
Yep,
point.
compare that,
And so
sure.
if you can help us understand, sort of, is there a gap, or are we going to do another master plan a la the 2009 master plan, or do these three work together to cover that same need set?
Sure.
So I think we'll just need to understand that, and the public will have to understand it too, so. I don't know if that helps you, Chris, but I think we do, I would like to have that conversation, but I think we kind of need to
If we
give
can
it a
get the
little bit
answer
of
to
time
how
to lay
you
it
just
out.
phrased it, yes, I think that would help. That's essentially the question I'm asking as
Sure.
well. Yeah.
Yep, John.
Well, when we were doing the implementation committee, it came up that the master plan was gonna be the new one, or the next one's gonna be a land use master plan. And, that wouldn't include things like facilities necessarily.
Right.
Right, so I think we need to
And
clear, I think we
more-
need to clear it up, because we're all talking about
Yeah,
different things.
and I think we need to see how it all comes together. And then do we really need to spend this kind of money on that?
So I think we have consensus that we need a facilities master plan.
Yes.
So I think we have consensus on that one. I think we all have questions about how the strategic master plan, the land use master plan, the master plan, and how those all fit together. So I think maybe before we spend any money on those,
Yeah,
that we have a further discussion as to how these work together and what the expectations are, Tom.
so why don't we, at least so far, we haven't talked about the land use, but why don't we put sort of a hold on the strategic plan, understand we're not going to spend any money on it, and we need to understand better how these different plans work together and what they are.
Yeah.
So let's, I'm going to suggest, Dan, that you mark this as a yes, like with an asterisk, just put a hold on the funds, but understand that we need to learn a little bit more before we can.
Before we actually.
Is it fair to say that, you've read our current master plan, is it the case, I mean, as I was in the master plan committee, we ended up actually tossing a lot of the non-land use stuff in the process.
It was
but-
just an overall plan.
I mean, what I think you're saying is that strategic plan plus land use plan is what we had meant that master plan to be, although it ended up becoming mostly land use plan in the end.
What-
Minus some of the goals and the vision of of the select board overall, the mission statement of the organization, those types of things would get wrapped in as well, that I don't think got wrapped into your 2009 plan.
Okay, so I think let's create space in a future meeting to expand on these and see how they work together, how they'd be paced, what they cover, what gaps intentionally or unintentionally it leaves relative to the 2009 plan. So soft yes or a hold on strategic plan. Let's talk about land use master plan explicitly, just for completeness.
Well, statutorily, don't we, we're supposed to have one, and aren't we out of compliance?
Well, in Massachusetts, really, we're okay. If we're in Rhode Island, we'd definitely be out of compliance.
Okay.
But Massachusetts, it's a wishy-washy type of
Okay.
thing, so.
Somehow I had in the back of my mind that every 10 years we're supposed to.
That's a good practice, is every 10 years, but most towns do not meet that.
That's what we were told when we did the other one.
Yeah.
It took us 3 years to do it.
We've talked about it a little bit, but are we a consensus yes on land use master plan?
The issue with this one that I see in terms of funding and timing is I don't know if we can get everything done in the 2.5 years timeframe if we're pushing out because of MBTA communities. So we can certainly have that conversation. We could do, if we did a partial funding, that would still concern me a little bit because you'd want to bring a consultant on for the full thing and not go in two pieces. That just seems disjointed to me. So
You might want to talk with Jeff then about the time.
yeah, he and I have been
Okay.
having conversations
I know you
about
have,
that. Yeah.
But yeah, that's, as John just said, it took us 3 years to do the last one, so.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we did, there was no, the actual implementation had no consultant with it. That was just, it was all in-house, so.
Well, we did have a consultant, fine.
No, when I was on it, we didn't.
Hmm?
No, when I was on it, we didn't. Because I remember sitting here in this very room with Jeff and who was
somebody helped
Jeff's
us put it
predecessor.
together.
Right, the plan itself,
Yes.
not the
Yeah,
implementation.
but we really did the legwork and everything on that, yes.
I guess my other thought was at town meeting, we were instructed by the town to
Yeah.
investigate Route 40.
Right.
And to me, looking at Route
That's sort
40
of
in
what
isolation
this
makes no
is, yeah.
sense. It should be done in the context of overall
Yeah.
land use.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. I mean, the town has changed, obviously, and we end up with these oddball problems that we've seen. So, I mean, I wish it was cheaper than $175,000, but it does seem like something that,
We do need it, yes.
it's something we need. So, I don't know.
But if we're not going to be able to get to it in the near future, why not we just put it into the regular budget? I think it would.
What's your, so Kristen, is
Could it
that?
be considered capital?
Yep.
You know, in terms of future?
Yeah. Okay. So the consensus is that just the timing of the obligation to the funds may not support this one?
It may not support this one. I mean, I'm pushed and pulled all over from this one, right? Because we're hearing from the community and we know from practice that we need to update our land use master plan. But because of NBTA communities and other things, we're constrained in terms of that. If we had 3 extra staff members, which I'm not, asking for, I promise, I would say yes, let's do it now. We can do both at the same time. But with the staff we have now and the resources we have now, I just don't think it's that it would do any justice to the community.
And is it a phased, I understand the idea of using one consultant, one sort of architect, an arc of a project. Could we scope a phase that could fit in the time frame that we have? And understanding that to complete it and do the phase 2 and 3 or whatever's left of it, we'll have to put it through capital. But this felt like a pretty direct mandate from the people, so
Let me talk with land use. I'm happy to talk that through related to a phased approach.
it seems like you'd be able to structure something so that you could go to a consultant and say, we want an arc that would cover the whole thing, but only actually fund that study and then fund the work that can be done in the time we have.
Then are you potentially at risk of having to deal with different consultants throughout the lifetime of that implementation and?
Well, I'm thinking what you would do is you would scope it with a consultant set and say, we want to scope the whole thing in terms of understanding what's involved. We'll fund phase 1. Now, you're right, if you couldn't fund that phase and there was a long gap, you probably couldn't ramp the same consultant group back up. But if this was a business problem, and I know I keep, whenever I say that I make a mistake, but you could find a consultant that would be happy to scope the arc and the phase with the understanding that we have to get the rest through capital. There might be a 3-month gap, there might be time.
Sure.
That's how you build town buildings. You hire an architect for design, development, then construction design, then, you build it. So you get this sort of three funded cycle. It's the same principle, I guess.
So maybe we need to have this one come back to us. Okay. So we won't do anything with that. So it means, yeah, we're not going to get to completion tonight anyway. We kind of need to see all these plans together in one place. But okay, sounds like we're going to mark that as a no, with the opportunity to come back maybe if we find out there is a way to scope this that could fit in the resources that we have on staff.
Can we do
Yeah, I was gonna-
hold health
Yeah.
insurance to the last one?
That's a little bit of a catch-all in my mind. Okay, so let's do poll pads.
I think we need them. As I recall from Patty's presentation, I think we need them.
Would be lovely to have them.
Is that where the group is?
I'm a yes.
Sounds like a ringing endorsement,
Okay.
guys.
Let's make that a yes. Upgrade all major systems to multi-factor authentication. This feels like another gun to the head kind of situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every day you read about hacking and breaches and cybersecurity. I really.
And our insurance is claiming they won't cover us if we don't do it.
Well, there you
So-
go. Okay, well, that's the end of that discussion, so.
Which is a problem. Okay, so Dan, let's go to the summary.
I would still plug a yes in for that, it sounded like.
Yes, please.
Yes.
So we have 639,000 change remaining. Again, that's without the 95,000 for the strategic plan.
And we also haven't allocated the schools. We need to go back to the
Yeah, we need
schools.
to go back.
because
We've not been done.
we didn't mark those.
Yes.
So, I think for today,
Wait, did we didn't mark the schools.
We haven't done the schools.
we need to go back and do the
Yeah.
schools. So we don't have this much available because we haven't made a decision on the
Right.
schools. Okay, why don't we go back and talk about the schools, and then we can decide what we're ready to decide, what we're ready to release, what we're not ready to release. So those are back up at the top. So let's invite Chris, who's been very patient, to come back up. What are people's sense now? I mean, so in a way you can't really talk about this. If the question is, do we need to ratchet this down by a percentage to kind of fairly deal with all the strategic programs we're considering? I don't know if you can do that without a philosophy of the health insurance trust, because how much do you need to reduce it is sort of the question. My sense is it would be great to add to the health insurance trust. That is absolutely an obligation that we have every single year on our way to our target. And so I'd be pretty comfortable leaning towards sort of funding these opportunities to get important learnings to plot our course and make in the end, the reserve smaller. So I'm still in the position where I would like to fund these as asked, because I think it's an important and relatively small amount of money in what we're talking about, and I think that we have to trust our partners in the school committee to make the best judgment about what the top priorities are, and that's what they've identified here.
So if we were to do the full funding for the 3 school items, what would be our remaining balance, real quick?
Just plug those in.
That's the side, right?
479,000 and change. Again, that's without the 95,000 for the.
And it's also without the land use,
Some
Yes.
partial land use.
partial land
Yeah.
use.
So in my thinking, if you put just notionally, we're not approving a number, but notionally, if you put $100,000 in the land use part that we can fit in the time we have, then you have 280 roughly to put into the health insurance trust. I think that that's a very reasonable, prudent allocation, and I don't feel like there's pressure to put a lot more in it. I think that's something that should be a routine yearly obligation. I don't think this is a driving need out of the
I
ARPA
lost you on
funds.
your math. I come up with less to the health trust fund, so just go.
Well, let me see.
I'm mathematically challenged,
Well,
Tom, so.
I'm saying roughly, we've got
Right.
sort of 200,000 soft circled, that's a strategy study and part of the land
Oh,
use.
okay, so now we have 479 left, and then you took 160 from 479.
Yeah, I took roughly 200 from that. So let's say it's roughly 280. I'm saying that if we allocate 280 to the health insurance trust, that feels like a prudent amount. I don't think it needs to be more, and I think I would make those trade-offs, I guess. So we would soft circle those amounts, not decide them today. And the whole health insurance trust allocation is basically soft circle too. I mean,
Right.
we can make
No.
modifications to that, but we could leave with a general sense of approach that we probably would have something like 280,000.
We just,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan?
I'm sorry. Just a clarification on the health insurance trust. Once funds are in there, they can't be pulled back out. So
Right, so we might hold them until the
Cautious.
finish line of.
Yes,
of-
that would be
Okay, now we have to
safer.
commit all the funds.
yes.
You're right. So we wouldn't say, oh, good, we'll put it in, okay, now we want them out, and we can't do that. We'd hold them on this side of the ledger and then move them the day before we have to, or something.
I guess, I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about the value of the learning on the town studies, and I really still don't see the value of learning from this, the school spending. I want to trust them, and I'll say, yeah, spend something, but yeah, I could not honestly tell a taxpayer that we're getting X out of this even now. Sorry.
I mean, do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, please.
I mean, so as far as the value, I mean, I think what we're looking at, it's one of the core, I mean, a lot of those go to equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, and then social emotional health. And so those are the core thrusts. If you look at our strategic plan, those are the core thrusts really for the next 3 years and have been unofficially for the past few years. And we feel like, especially coming out of COVID, we're seeing the impacts on our students, especially on the social emotional health side. And so we know, I mean, if you've watched our meetings lately, these are the things that are coming up over and over and over, that the concern for the students, the concern for the district being inclusive, things that we are just striving towards. And so to us, Westford is a great academic school district. That's not going away. That's not changing. That's been the way it is for a while. These are where we're really looking to make growth and gains in the district and see the most need. And so it's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity to really take a bite out of that.
So, I think what you're saying, so looking at the equity audit, would it be fair to say you do the equity audit, and out of that audit comes sort of first a look at where we are, sort of the status of where the schools are with respect to DEI, and then from there what recommendations in terms of what the schools can do to address, I'll call them deficits, okay, or holes, as opposed holes, and how to address those, and what strategies might be implemented. Is that
Yeah,
the
exactly.
ultimate
That's what I would
result?
expect to see. Thank you for putting in tangible terms.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be strategies. It would be changes to policy, changes to curriculum, changes to practices, any number of things that we would do across the board. across the district.
So I guess at the end of the day, some concrete suggestions or recommendations would come out of it.
And on the other ones, on the collaborative problem solving and on the restorative practices, it would be building this capacity in the district to be able to reach our students in a way that we haven't done in the past. And the outcomes for that would be better student health, better student mental health, and ultimately better student academic outcomes. Because if the students are coming to school and they're not in a good place, then they're not going to be in a good place to learn. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that all of our students, and that's an equity thing too, because not all the students are in the same place, social and emotionally speaking. And so make sure they are, so they can all come ready to learn.
Chris, one of the things I also remember, and you brought it up, Chris, from our last discussion, was between the restorative practices project and the collaborative problem-solving piece, there seemed to be a piece missing for our middle schoolers. And so I'm wondering, if we approve all of these funds, if there's a way that perhaps the school committee can go back and at least look at those two and see if there's some way you can address you can bring the middle schoolers into those projects, because they obviously clearly have the same issues.
No, we were really glad you both, I know you two in particular were touching on that last time. So if you look, and you don't have to bring it up, I'll just talk to it, the new kind of summary sheet that we did go back, thanks to you bringing that up, and kind of put our heads together, talked to Dr. Chu, and said what makes sense. Because I think it was a good opportunity for us too to take it to the next level of, okay, the next level of detail on what the restorative practices pilot would look like. Like, what do we really want to do? How many staff would be involved? And so if you look, you'll see that we actually added middle school to that, because we said, it really does make sense. And we think we know we have staff at that level that would be very eager to be part of the pilot. And so we've made it middle school and high school. So we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So I guess it sounds like some of us are trending yes, some of us are not as convinced yet.
I wouldn't say no. I was think more of a lower level, but I'm not going to. Because that's what says go for it. I'll go for it. It's fine.
John, do you have any comment?
I just question, you've had a DEI committee in effect for how many years now, 2 or 3 years? And and you've been working on that, and you had the surveys that you've done. So what drives you to need the equity audit? What indications are you getting that this needs to be done? And then kind of what are your expectations of the results as far as the level where you're looking?
Yeah, I think if you look at survey data, you see that there is the need. There is the need with students and staff to have a better sense of inclusivity in the district. I think we see that almost anywhere you go today. And we have a district DEI team that meets regularly, but that's made up of mostly staff. There's not they're doing their jobs. They have great discussions. The superintendent is able to take the output of those discussions and put things into action when possible. But this is really a chance to really diagnose. These are experts who would come in and really do that diagnosis of what we can do. And again, what policies need to be changed, what hiring practices, what I think curriculum is a big one that we're going to look at across the board. Things that we just don't have the resources to give the full time and credit to that it deserves. We've never done something like this, right? And so it's like to be able to do this at a point in time to really measure where we're at would be huge. And outcomes, I would expect that our students and families would feel more welcomed and included in the district and in the town in general. I think it's an opportunity. We've heard that there are instances where people don't, and I think, and it's the way the world is moving, that we need to look at all the things in place, all the systems, all the materials we're using in the classrooms, and just to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And don't get me wrong, we're going to do this work anyway, but this really is an opportunity to do it in a way that we may never get a chance to do that in a full manner again.
And I also think it's important, and I mean no disrespect to the school committee or to any of our teachers, staff, et cetera, but I do think it's important when you're going to do an audit that you have a third-party independent person who comes in and looks at it from the outside without any preconceived notions. So I think that that's important as well.
Okay. I think we're at a consensus yes on these.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
So let's go
Thank
back
you.
to
Thanks, Chris.
let's go back to the bottom, and let me ask if people are comfortable with what we talked about, which is kind of a soft allocation, not to be made right now, but a soft allocation of 280 to the healthcare fund, and then we'll leave these two representing the strategic study and the land use study until we get back together in a future meeting to look at how all these plans will fit together, how they'd be staged, and the gaps, intentional or not, that are left with the 2009 plan. I think that's a place we could end, and we will go through and just be specific about what we're releasing and what we're approving, if that makes sense. Some of these things, like the fire foam, I would argue that they should go ahead and do it now. We've approved it.
Mm-hmm.
For something that's for year 3 of something, we've approved it, but yeah.
Dan wanted to say something.
Yeah, just for the health insurance contribution, I would hold off until you're ready to make that commitment, because we can't just reserve it in the trust. I think once you're committed, you're committed. So I would just recommend delaying until you're
just
ready.
soft circling too.
Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
And
That's
what
absolutely fine.
I was gonna say the same thing, because who knows if some emergency comes up and we need to use, $50,000 of ARPA funds for something, or $100,000, we need to be able to do that. So I think allocating to the health insurance fund is like the last thing we should do.
I think you both said what I meant. I was thinking,
Okay.
we're gonna budget for it but not spend it, and so you're saying it better than I did. We're gonna not allocate it for the purposes of this, but that can be in the back of
So
the minds. And John, did you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say that, right now, that reserve for the health trust fund is going down. And it's gonna be replenished, I think, at the end of in the new fiscal year. Dan, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's the way it works.
And we kind of need to monitor that and understand where that reserve fund goes after the first of the year, and then kind of how that's gonna,
Okay.
before we start.
So we'll know more then.
Yeah, we'll know more. I
Okay.
think.
Good point.
Tom,
Chris, yeah.
just, when do you think we would get back to discussing the strategic plan and potentially moving forward towards?
I think I would just ask Kristen how much time she needs. Probably not the next meeting, but maybe the meeting.
I could get it to you by a week in advance of your end of June meeting.
Okay. I want to see something happen. I think I just don't want to put it on the back burner for a long time.
Yeah, well, let's give Kristen a chance to take a breath, but it'll be soon-ish like that, because I think you're right. We want to keep the momentum up. She doesn't have to commit to it right now. Okay. So, is there any lack of clarity? Let's just go through these quick, just to tick through them, just so people who are department heads know what they can do right now.
Should we go through also, Tom, and say which ones we actually will release the funding now?
Yes. Yep. Okay. I'm just going to recap, and we'll use Dan's because it's the most active. So, we do want to approve the 2024 community safety. I guess that would be. It would be available for planning. It would be used before the date. But I don't think Chief Chambers is planning just to go off and do something with that money right now. We've taken the 2026 out, consistent with a bunch of other things. The live captioning, I think we've said yes and agree that Westford Cat can go ahead and commit those funds. Community Wellness Coordinator, we agreed yes, and that will be part of fiscal 25.
Half at 25,000.
Yes, 25, and that'll be part of fiscal 25. Fire department overtime, we have said yes to, and I guess we'll wait to see how the final situation resolves and then replenish the trust, or do we need to go ahead and replenish that now?
I think once you vote this, the funds are released, they're transferred to that expense for ARPA.
And that's
So
what you want to do? You don't want to hold back for resolution?
I don't think it's likely there'll be a successful resolution to this, but even if there was, we could reappropriate those funds as super time,
Okay.
future time. So
Okay, so we are going to go ahead and transfer those to that fund. And firefighting foam, chief can proceed with that. The 3 school programs we talked about, the school committee can commit those. We've agreed to fiscal 24 and 25 rental mortgage utility, and we'll basically distribute those, I guess. I'm not sure what the accounting is, but they'll be available during that time frame for them to allocate. We took out 26 for the reasons we've discussed already. We've approved the 3 capital requests here for Westford Cat. I'm just making a point that we approved the 3990 for line 12. So that they can go ahead and commit those funds. We did not approve the community health assessment, but would like the opportunity to come back and present to you again sort of what that is. So we'll also put that in a future meeting.
And also, aren't we going to, I think, also talk about whether that can be part of, can some of that be folded into the strategic?
It really can't. I mean, the high level part can, but the nitty gritty data collection
No, I
and
know
the
that-
impact
okay.
items can't. But I can work with Ray on including that in my overall memo and kind of roadmap,
Yeah.
and come back to you at the end of June with that.
And in the future meeting, I think we do this in a separate meeting than these roadmap meetings probably, but then the strategic plan fits for the town we've talked about. But specifically what we're talking about there is what exactly is the data, what exactly is the action plan that follows,
Right.
how does it fit in with what we've already done,
Right.
is it distinct or is there overlap? So we'll create an opportunity to make the case again, but it's no for tonight.
Yep.
We approved the computer maintenance, the GIS stuff. The PFAS testing, we did a partial. We thought the ratepayers should pay the PFAS testing stuff, but the non-ratepayers, which are well owners in town, we approved the $20,000 through the Board of Health for those tests, with a caveat that we would like them to basically enhance their methodology for how they're allocating who gets tested. Meaning we want to get some geographic cover. We at least want some, we'd like something else beyond just first come, first serve that might give us more information, I guess. We argued that lines 33 and 17 both should go through the normal conservation funding process or CPC process. Economic Development Coordinator, we voted yes. Website redesign, we approved. Facilities Master Plan, we approved. We kind of soft circled the next two pending this discussion we're going to have soon about what are all these plans, how do they fit together, what gaps do they leave. And we also have left open the contribution to health insurance trust. We'll leave that open more or less to the last minute and allocate the remaining available funds to that at that time. Poll pads we approved, and Patty can go ahead and commit those funds. And multi-factor authentication we approved, so Mike Wells can go ahead and commit those funds. Great. I think we got very close to what could be a final plan, and we also landed on the things we need to know more about. So very successful. Thanks for committing the time for an extra session for this. I think it did well in this format. It would have been hard to do it on a regular night. And unless there's any further business, I'll entertain a movement to adjourn. Sorry, Dan?
Can we have an official vote for this for the record?
Yeah.
Yes.
Possible?
Move to approve everything we did tonight.
As outlined by.
That's
It's
what is
outlined by
presented.
Tom.
As recap,
Chair.
you can find it on the tab, on the tape. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'm sorry, I moved too fast. Is there anything else we should cover before we adjourn? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.